how are we taking care of our student athletes, ensuring that they are not only getting the education they came here for, but we are giving them access and opportunity for all of the new ways that being a student athlete allows you to become part of what the public generally sees.
Most of them have never seen that place when it is really rocking, and there's no better place, in my opinion, than Geisa Field and Martin Stadium when it's full to the brim and loud, and that place can get going.
Well, here we go. We are so excited to have our very first episode of the Inside WSU Athletics podcast. Here we are at the Director of Athletics here at WSU, and McCoy, and we are pumped up to get this going. Here we are. How are you feeling? We're excited to be able to communicate with fans and to get this off the ground and rolling.
Yeah, I am so excited. I feel like we've been talking about this for quite a while, and we were excited about it, and then to have it, come to fruition now. It's great. I mean, just the opportunity to be able to talk with fans, on a more regular kind of casual basis, and just people wondering, there's a lot going on right now. And I think at some point I always wonder, like, what's the way, how to best communicate that or how to best get it out. And some things are small, some are big. And anytime I get to spend with you, obviously, is always a pleasure as well. So I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm just excited for our conversations we're going to have. There's no lack of things to get up to date on. When it comes to Cougar athletics, there's always exciting things to keep folks in the loop on. And let's make sure to hit on. We'll not only have the updates from you, Ann, but we're going to have guests. And we're getting started in a big way here on our first episode. We're going to have WSU President Cantwell joining us. I can't wait to talk to her. And then Alex Brink. There's no bad time to talk to Alex, especially, the Husky killer himself. All that
exactly. The dominator of Huskies. Exactly. It's no better time to talk to him than this week. But I'm excited because it really isn't about me just talking, you know what I mean? To your point, it's about having a lot of guests or things that we hear from people that they want to know more about and bringing those people in, or coaches or student athletes or whatever. It's, it's meant to be both fun, but also informative. And I'm super excited for President Cantwell to come on as well. So that'll be great.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to, but since we're here, we're kind of getting our footing with the first ever podcast and kind of laying the groundwork for what's to come. Let's take a look back. Your first year as athletic director. What would you say has gone right? What would you do over? How do you look back on all that has unfolded? I'm sure it's been like drinking from a fire hose.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot. We could spend the whole first episode on that probably. So I'll try to, but it's been a lot, like no shortage of things going on, both in college athletics, but certainly at Washington State University. And I will say, even that I've been here as long as I have, starting in January of 2001, it still has been a bit of a fire hose because of all the unprecedented things going on and all the change. We have a lot of new student athletes, a lot of new coaches and staff. And again, certainly a new president, new Pac-12. It's just, it's been, what I would reflect on, I would say, is just it's been a year of really, I think, trying to provide some stability in a little bit of an uncertain time, and, kind of hope and optimism and excitement for the future. That's really been a lot of my focus in amongst a lot of really hard decisions that we've had to make, just really to put Washington State University athletics in the best possible position, to be prepared for a lot of this going forward. And, what I would say was the thing I've enjoyed probably the most is a chance to interact with our student athletes and coaches and staff in a little different role, which has been, really terrific. And being able to be out with the Pac-12 and nationally to some degree, to really represent WSU and kind of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do. But also getting out. My role previously had been pretty internal with a lot of things, more specific to campus. And so, we did the homegrown tours this summer, which were super fun to get out and really interact and meet with people in different locations and just the community and everything and the support and the excitement and almost giving people like the okay to be excited and not have to look back and think about, oh, well, this is different or that's different, but really excitement, for the future. And so I'd say that's been really good. As far as looking back on things, like that I would probably change or wish could have been handled differently. I mean, I think although I've been in athletics, a long, long time as a senior administrator, this role still has its unique differences and challenges. And I think, although the decision itself was a really hard one that had to be made with our track and field program, the one thing that I would do differently is I would handle the communication of that differently, quite honestly. I think internally and externally, we had some things that really didn't go as we had anticipated relative to a plan. And that's my responsibility. And I have to own that. And we've got tremendous people in and around that program, both historically and currently. And that was a disservice to them. And that I own and think about how we could do better in the future. So that would be the one thing I would say would be a do-over, is really just the communication and kind of the unintended consequences of that. So,
well, and with being the athletic director, what has surprised you about this job? Obviously, you're no stranger to being around WSU athletics, to being around college athletics, but I imagine there's a lot of differences when it comes to just being in that spot of being the athletic director.
Yeah, there really are, there are and there aren't, I think, at the same time. So I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate that. There's no office next door to go check with, you know what I mean? I think would be I'm the office next door now. And so, but I think one thing I have enjoyed is that you can also represent what you feel like is the best interests of the department. And, you are the person that's working with people, whether it's head coaching hires, whether it's decisions, whether it's, exciting new ventures, whether it be I know we're going to talk later about some of the game day experience, and just being able to bring people together to really work towards something that we all believe in. That's really an exciting, wonderful thing. And I think being able to hear from people directly, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, about how they think things are going or things they'd like to see improved. For me, it's a challenge to look at ways we can make something that I think is already pretty special, even more special and great. And so I've enjoyed it. I really have. I didn't think I could have more meetings than I already had. And somehow I do, which I'm trying to figure out a better way to balance that, I think, to be a little more, fortunately, I've been pretty intentional about being as local in Pullman as I can, unless it's something specific to WSU athletics relative to, like we mentioned, either the Night with Cougar Athletics or the homegrown events or donor meetings or, meeting with fans. But it's a lot to balance and juggle. And I feel like I'm still finding the best way to balance my time so things aren't slipping through the cracks as much as I wish they were.
I can't imagine to look at your phone and see what the calendar is like on a given day when you wake up and you're like, okay, what's on tap for the day?
Yeah.
Just down the line. Well, and again, you're no stranger to WSU athletics, but getting to know you, and it's been such a pleasure for me to get to know you. I know, we were on the bus to a football game recently and getting talked to you about dropping off your son at college, and you are the mother of 2 Division I student athletes. What would you say about folks who maybe don't know you as well outside of, your role with athletics, but what balance, I know you use that word, balance is like with your job, but also just when it comes to life as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, everything we do in life, can take as much of our time as we let it, I feel like, in a lot of cases. And it's been really important through me over time to really remain present, in my personal life as much as my professional life. As you mentioned, I have 2 kids, and my daughter, our daughter, was a Division I student athlete here at Washington State University. She's a swimmer. And she had a chance to go a lot of places. She was recruited, in high school, probably by about half the Pac-12 teams at the time, a lot of schools nationally. And to see how she went through that process and what was important to her was really fascinating and valuable to me, to be honest, as an athletic administrator, to see how those decisions are navigated, but also firsthand the immense pressure that these student athletes are under and balancing everything. And there was no pressure from us to choose WSU. We let her make that choice. But at the end of the day, she moved here when she was 18 months old when we moved to Pullman. And she said, Mom, I feel like I've been a Coug my entire life. Like, this is where I want to be. I want to be part of, building the program and being part of something special. And, I can't envision competing against Washington State. And so that was really special. And it was great to see her here. And I think we did a good job. She's since graduated and, was fortunate to not only get 2 degrees, a bachelor's and a master's from Washington State University, but also, leave with a lot of memories and some school records and just feeling like she could help contribute to something. But then, to really then go through my son's recruiting process, there's about 7 years between the kids. And it's so different now when he went through the recruiting process than when our daughter did, just because of all the changes in college athletics and just, again, different pressures. And I'll never forget, he asked me to go on his recruiting visits with him. And I asked him, I'm like, Jake, am I going as a mom or as an administrator? Because I want to be sure I know my lane. Like, why am I going? And he laughed and he said, maybe a little bit of both, which I appreciated. But really going through that process of going through the visits and being able to see other facilities and hear about all the other things that amazing, people are doing, but also to have a son, he's also a swimmer. So to have kids in, Olympic sports relative to all the changes and everything going on. And to drop him off for his freshman year is this past fall a month ago, I guess now, was really exciting. I mean, it's a great, as anybody who's gone through it as a parent knows, it's kind of a bittersweet moment. As I told you on the bus, you're so excited for their next chapter and their opportunities. But then as a parent, you're kind of like, oh, wow, like this is what we, strive to do, is to raise our kids and put them in a great position to be successful. But, dropping them off that far away from home was a little bit of an eye opener as well. So.
Yeah, especially the youngest
I know.
too, I think. Yeah.
I know. Don't remind me. There's such an interesting, great group of parents that we've gotten to know that have seniors at Pullman High this year. And we've often talked about that. We're like, boy, we need to get together to kind of just, have a place to just talk through all of that and process it as the youngest kids going off to college. But it's good. I'm super proud of both of them. And it's been important for me to continue to balance that in college athletics. And it's a, great thing for them to be part of, but, it can take a lot of time. And so if you don't, if you're not intentional about balancing that time, it can get eaten up pretty quickly.
Well, as we are so excited to get this started and to have episodes moving forward, but on our first one here, let's sprinkle in, again, you've been here, you mentioned how when you moved to Pullman, your daughter was 18 months. So you have, there's been a lot of professional life, personal life here on the Palouse. Just a memory, if you could share with us that stands out from your time here at WSU and in Pullman.
Wow. That would be really hard. So I'm trying to think. That's a great question. But you know what? I'm going to pick one of my first memories because that is what popped into my head first when you just asked me that. We were living in Portland, Oregon at the time and had been in St. Louis and some larger cities, but also some smaller communities. I'm from a small town, grew up in a smaller town in Wisconsin. And we came on a visit to, interview and look at the position at Washington State. And I'd known Jim Sturk, our athletic director at the time, for a long time. He and our families have been close since he hired me my very first job out of college. And he said, it's this amazing community and, you're, great place to raise, your young daughter or your family if, other kids are added in the future, kind of thing. And it's, and I thought, okay, great. And, you see so much. It was like a recruiting visit, it's this, okay, that was kind of a whirlwind. My gut tells me it's a great place. Well, we moved in December of 2000. So we had a little bit of time to settle in for Christmas. And then before I started January 1, and we were renting first to be able to kind of get to know the Pullman community and where we wanted to, again, coming from a city, we're thinking, okay, get to know all the neighborhoods. And obviously every neighborhood's amazing in Pullman. So, but we had just moved in and our neighbors brought us over cookies. And they said, welcome to Pullman. And I don't even know if he remembers this. So it happened to be that our neighbor at the time was Bruce Pinkleton, who we know is now the dean of the Murrow College. And he and his family happened to live next door to where we were renting. And they brought us these amazing cookies. They welcomed us to the neighborhood. And we thought, wow, this is exactly the type of community that we want to be part of. And it just kind of solidified, it wasn't part of a recruiting visit. It wasn't part of a, enjoy the community sales job. It was just a great human being and family welcoming us to the community that they obviously love as well. So, and I will tell you, other people have mentioned since they've moved and they don't live next to Bruce, other neighbors have brought them cookies. And so I just think it's part of the great community. And that's the first thing that popped into my mind. There's so many great athletic memories, but I think that was the first moment where I really knew that we had picked a special place to be.
I love that one. And we'll have plenty of time for some of those athletic memories as well. So we're recapping the last year, but I mean, shoot, Ann, just in the summer, there's a lot that's happened. So I guess maybe we'll start with academic successes, because I know there's been a lot of those. And then we could jump into changes to the collegiate landscape. I know there's the House settlement. There's a lot that you have had to navigate and continue to navigate.
Yeah, most definitely. We hear about and talk a lot about obviously the athletic accomplishments and achievements, which we're super proud of. I mean, I think, 13 of our 17 sports competed in postseason last year. Which is amazing and really terrific, and continuing to be on a good trajectory this year in the early season of the fall. But I really feel like the academic piece of what we do, I mean, our student athletes are so driven to be great ambassadors of themselves as human beings as well, and students. And I think we were at maybe a 3.36 cumulative GPA this past spring, which is the highest ever in WSU athletics. And I think if you look at, there's a lot to be said about, all the folks transferring in and out, and are they even worrying about academics and, some of those sorts of things. And so it makes me happy that, that we can say that all of our programs are doing really well academically. And as a whole, they're, above a 3.3 GPA average with all that they're, weighing and taking a lot of really difficult majors. We have a lot of 4.0s, a lot of honor students, and just, I'm really proud that they continue to remember that, there's more to this than just the athletic. They get out in the community. We had an amazing amount of community service hours from all of our teams. And so it's great. They're really great people to be around, and high achieving in all areas of their lives, really.
No, that's well said. And then just the summer itself, there was the House settlement. So as much as you want to, let Coug fans know about the House settlement, and then I know we'll get into this with President Cantwell as well, but just the priorities moving forward for WSU athletics.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I think we're still sorting a lot of that out with the House settlement. It did go into effect July 1 as to some things we can do and additional tools we have to help support our student athletes. I think one thing we've really focused on is still remembering that athletics and an athletic scholarship is the entree into an educational experience for our student athletes and an opportunity. And so we're really looking at ways the House settlement allows us to do or provide, I should say, more athletic scholarships to our student athletes and opportunity relative to their education. And then also looking at ways we can help with, whether it be, the Alston money that used to be the case for full cost of attendance, whether it be institutional NIL, which we are now legally able to provide, but sorting out a way that is consistent with kind of our values at Washington State University. And our coaches have really looked more at retention, quite frankly, versus recruitment with some of the NIL pieces. And just weighing what tools are going to be the most valuable. And like anything else with the, limited resources, I mean, just in that they're not endless. We have to prioritize where we spend money. And the athletic scholarships really are one thing that we're talking about cannot slip in the priority. That has got to be our number one priority. And evaluating the roster sizes. A lot of people talk about the House settlement relative to the financial pieces, but there are also some roster limitation pieces that go into effect relative to how many student athletes we can have on each team. And there, nationally, that's still being sorted out a little bit as to, is there a grandfathering sort of like we saw the COVID year relative to eligibility, and, trying to find a way that you can, give student athletes opportunity on one hand, but then not have the double-edged sword of eliminating or limiting opportunity for student athletes on the other. And it's really been unprecedented, I think, with how everybody's trying to evaluate it and navigate it. And, we're certainly in that same position of trying to do that.
Let's navigate. And then shoot, here we are. Fall sports are in full swing. So as we'll talk about fall sports here, but one of those big things that I know priority and emphasis for athletics and for everyone on the staff is the football games and the experience. Can you talk about the enhancements when it comes to both, athletics and campus for fall sports? But, we're talking football as well that we get into this time of year.
Yeah, that has definitely been a priority for us in the off season for a lot of reasons. We understand, that people invest an incredible amount of time and money to travel to the home football games here in Pullman. And we want it to be not only a great experience for the game itself, and whether that be in-game amenities, obviously, that have had, a variety of pieces of news throughout the year, including this past week relative to those amenities. But also improving the game day experience. Like, we know the scoreboard needs to be better. We know the in-game elements need to be better. Doing, a movie night the night before the home opener, doing the Wyatt Flores concert, but also doing partnerships for those things, partnering with the Student Entertainment Board and the Alumni Association or the City of Pullman for First Down Fridays and, all of those things, morning yoga. Like, our staff has been brainstorming. We've been brainstorming with fans, supporters, community members, and finding ways that, number one, it can be a great experience when they come to the game, but number two, that they have so many other things that they were able to do as part of that, that they're talking about that as well. And it makes people feel like they're missing out. Our marketing folks talk about, FOMO all the time. And that's really what we're trying to generate, is that people heard about what the people in Pullman experienced and they thought, wow, like, I missed out. I want to be there for the next game. But I will say, that's not to say everything is going to be immediately perfect or better. Like, it's going to be a work in progress. We can only chip away at so many things at once. We know some things are going to be trial and error. And our goal is to get better every game. And so, people see the improvement, that they see the effort, but also that it's important to us. Like, we're listening to our fans, to the people that come to the games, to the community of Pullman, to the campus, and we want to do what we can to make it better. And again, it's not going to be immediately, a lot of things. I might give the field house as an example. It's so many people are excited with the change for the Cub, and we also have people that are like, oh, I miss the field house. Like, I always went there. I loved it. But then they'd be like, oh, but it was kind of hot and it had gotten kind of empty and it wasn't as lively as it used to be. And so just looking at ways we can use our resources to make the entertainment widespread, a little something for everybody, and different and good. People have loved the changes with the Cougar Prowl, from my understanding. Camping, we didn't have a ton of people come camp, but the folks that did enjoyed it, and we found some things we could do to make it more interesting and better and build on it. The yoga has gotten bigger and bigger every week that we've done it. And so that's what it's about. I think it's just an effort and finding out what people enjoy, what they don't, and looking for ways that we can be part of the solution and making things better as well.
With that, so football off to the races, but we've got soccer, definitely in the full swing of things. Volleyball, and I know as we sit here today, a big one coming up, September 17th against UW, and then cross country had the WSU Cougar Classic at the Colfax Golf Course. So just overall thoughts on what is such a fun and busy time when the fall sports get off into the races.
Yeah, it really is the energy and the excitement of all of the, student athletes putting into motion what they've been working so hard for. And I would say, much like the game day experience and a lot of other things, I would remind people, like, things are a work in progress. Like, I feel like, soccer and volleyball, as you mentioned, men's and women's cross country and football, all off and running. And, I think, as with any season, there's some contests that are better than others, or some that things fall into place better than others, or whatever it might be. But I had a chance to travel actually with our soccer team to Cal when they competed there recently, and just to be able to spend time with them, to watch them prepare and compete, and just again to remind us what we can do to help better support our student athletes. But I think people are doing good things. Like, I'm so excited for volleyball to finally play at home, which will be great. And soccer, people are still trying to determine, now that there's no overtime in the regular season still, they're like, okay, is a tie a good thing? What does that mean? And so, I'd say so far the ties we've had have been, good things relative to the opponents and the quality and building everything. And it's been good. And I think with football, it's interesting. I think what I would remind people is sometimes that we need a regulator on our pendulum. Like, I think things are never as, up or never as down as people think they are so early in the season. And just remembering, we have a lot of people working really hard. And, it's like after the Idaho game, people are like, okay. And then after San Diego State, people are like, okay. And then after this last weekend, I mean, I would tell you there's no one more frustrated than the staff and the student athletes, with the performance of the result, but it's not for lack of effort and trying and preparation. And you know what I mean? Sometimes things don't go like you prepare for them to go, and it's how you respond. And, I've been thinking about that a lot, with Apple Cup week and everything else. I mean, there've been a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but at the end of the day, to continue to believe and support our teams is the best thing that all of us can do, and to help support them. And yeah, the fall has been great. I'm excited for it. I really am, for the rest of the seasons.
And we're looking forward to having our very first guest on the podcast. Without further ado, let's get to our first guest here on the Inside WSU Athletics podcast. Well, no better first guest for our first ever podcast. Ann, can you tell us who we have joining us today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, we're excited. We couldn't start a podcast without having the Washington State University president on as our inaugural guest. We're so thrilled to have Dr. Betsy Cantwell joining us, 12th president at Washington State University. And President Cantwell, without any further ado, you really have hit the ground running, both literally and figuratively. We thought it might be fun to tell us first a little about that weekend of waving the flag in Columbus and then jetting back to Pullman to be able to raise the flag here at Idaho, a unique experience not many can say they've done.
It was an amazing experience. I came into Washington State University saying athletics is massively important. And I think I've kind of tried my very best to live that. So that day in particular, going to Columbus, getting out in front of the game day crowd and waving this really large flag, it was super exciting. The Washington State University support system is amazing. So there were all these Cougs there waving many flags, actually. It was really fun. And then thanks to incredible corporate donors being able to get on a plane and come back to Pullman in time for the game here and raising the flag here was just both an iconic experience, but also seems like it really sets the tone for the Cougar Nation that not only am I all in, but we are all in. We are about meeting the future and having a lot of fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, and then maybe if we could think a little more locally, because you've been out and about just as much, if not more so here, maybe specific to athletics. I know I've seen you. You've been at a lot of our practices so far. You've been at some of our all-student athlete functions. And maybe really just talking a little bit about your involvement and why that's been important to you.
Well, I mean, it's always important to me. Look, I think I've just said in so many different ways, athletics is in many ways, for those of us in public higher education, it's the heart of how people form this kind of family relationship with us for a lot of reasons. We could talk about that forever, but it's really, really important. And so I want our student athletes to know that they're actually performing a service for us. So I go to as many practices as I can, which isn't as many as I'd like to. And I'll be having student athletes over for breakfasts and things like that. In Pullman, our facilities, for instance, are pretty amazing for amongst our peers. I'm sure plenty of people will go, oh yeah, well, what about that? And what about that? But the truth is that we have really great facilities, and your coaches and staff are amazing. So we really are. We have this incredible platform that we are leaping from into the new. And I know you'll want to go here, but into this new Pac-12 conference, which kicks off in a year, and that is a great position for us. There's always second guessing is really easy, but I look at facilities, I look at staff, I look at, our capabilities and our boosters and donors and fans, and we are positioned quite well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know too. This might be a good time to segue into talking a little bit about the new Pac-12. I mean, you've been such a huge part of the Pac-12 continuing forward, both prior to even getting to campus at Washington State, due to your time at Utah State University and understanding the importance. But then maybe your some of your thoughts, as a definite insider, since we're inside WSU Athletics and WSU, and maybe some of your observations or reflections on that.
Yeah, I think everything is TBD there, but I think it's really important for all of us to keep our eye on the opportunity. So I did that when I was the president of Utah State University and got massive support from around the state of Utah at that time to join the pack. Why? Because it's iconic and it's like startup scale opportunity. Those two things are really unique. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is taking an amazing and very popular and important athletics brand into the future the way the Pac-12 is. So I'm here now and really encourage everybody that you talk to, and anybody out there, to really understand what this opportunity is and get on the bus that is going towards taking the Pac-12 places that nobody else is able to go. There are a lot of really cool things about the universities that are coming in, Oregon State and Washington State, that are here. We can always look at the potential problems, but what we really need to do is look at where and how is this going to mark us as both unique and cool and gritty and really defining a very interesting future for college athletics. You asked me, Ann, a question about Pullman, so I want to give you a little. So that's sort of our athletics. But this is an incredible small town. It's defined by our university. It really is the hallmark of kind of what fierce Cougs are like. But it's also a really nice place to live. It's really an amazingly friendly and sweet location. I think that's why our students have such a fabulous undergraduate experience here. But our fan experience is also built around that, the ability to come to games here and experience and or re-experience that.
And I'd be curious to hear, since we have you here in such great perspective, what are the challenges when it comes to college athletics today from the presidential perspective?
Yeah, well, it largely revolves around money, and I know that sounds crass, and it really isn't just, although it is a lot of a finance game, but that's because the way I explain it is that the revenue streams are kind of shifting. And let me put on the hat of what it must be like to be a student athlete. So I think a lot about how are we taking care of our student athletes, ensuring that they are not only getting the education they came here for, but we are giving them access and opportunity for all of the new ways that being a student athlete allows you to become part of what the public generally sees. So if you think about NIL from the president's financial perspective, it's a mandate that we have to fulfill for our students. If you think about it from the student athlete perspective, it is, I have to learn all about finance and a whole bunch of matters associated with revenues that I didn't have to learn 10 years ago. If I became a pro, maybe, but not before that. Now I've got to know it the minute I step into my student athlete role. I've also got to understand what it means to have employed people, what it means to bring your family even more into what your image is. How do I develop my image? How do I choose to deploy that image? Those are all really, really important for the student athlete. So when I think about the complexity of what a president has to consider, we have to raise enough NIL to be of use and value to our student athletes. our coaches and the whole world in which we are now competing, not just on the field and not just in athletics, but financially. And I have to really think about how we are serving our student athletes in that world where they have to know an awful lot about what that is. So it's complicated.
So, President Cantwell, we have you. It might be interesting for people to know. You and I talk a lot about different ways that the university and the athletics department, and all of our different constituencies can partner or to do different things. Because often people think about athletics or the academic side kind of in their individual silos, and we feel very much intertwined with the mission. So, yeah, maybe talk about that.
Everything that we think about here, and Ann, you do know this because I've been really, all right, where's the academic enterprise here, cross correlate with athletics? And it's kind of everywhere, right? So we have students, athletes who are students, and they come in and they're part of the academic enterprise. We educate them, we provide advisors for them. They get those kinds of services that every other student gets, but they're unique because they have a lot of their time is taken up with many things that aren't true for most students. We bring the academic enterprise even to our facilities. We do events. We bring students from the business school or from sports management or who are learning in areas they are not student athletes, but they need access to this incredible athletics enterprise that we have. It provides the capacity to bring athletics out into our communities as we are telling high school students that they should come here because they can see not only what will be like academically, but what will be like experientially. We do things like we honor faculty members every game on the field so that everybody knows that these components of our institution are really enmeshed. And that athletics cares about academics as much as academics cares about athletics, and vice versa. There are many ways in which the teaching and learning enterprise is different, but we are intimately entwined at an institution like ours, and we honor that, and we are really very happy that our faculty and our staff support our athletics programs, and our athletics programs support our faculty and staff.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. No, I was just going to say, Ann, while we have President Cantwell here, just anything else the two of you want Coug fans to know right now?
Yeah, so I mean, other than we are all in, I think I'll just point to one thing because it really highlights what the student fan experience is like here. And I want to remind the Coug Nation that everybody starts as a student, right? Which is there's these reviews and rankings of higher ed; they're all over the place. But that Princeton review, which is really iconic and interesting, has basically placed us at number 1 for students who love their college and number 3 for best athletic facilities. And that is, to highlight what I said earlier, when you come here as a student, you don't have to be a rabid football fan, but you will intersect somewhere in your experiences with athletic facilities and with student athletes and with people who work in the athletics but actually come and talk to your class. And I think that becomes part of why this is such a great place to go to school. So for the Coug Nation, NIL is important for athletics, but these kind of experiences that our students have across the board of who we are and what we are like as Coug fans is equally important.
Well, that's great. Well, we feel extremely fortunate to have you here as the president. It's been great getting a chance to work together. And I know
anytime, Ann, anytime you need me.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. President Cantwell, thank you for the time, and go Cougs.
And go Cougs. Thank you, guys.
Well, joining us now, the one, the only Alex Brink, someone Coug fans know so well for all of his success on the field. I have the good fortune of teaming up with him every Saturday throughout the fall up in the radio broadcast booth. Alex Brink. Alex, thanks for being here. There's never a bad time to talk to you, but it's also Apple Cup week. the Husky killer himself, more wins than any other Cougar quarterback in program history against UW. Happy Apple Cup week. How are you doing?
Gosh, it's the best week, isn't it? I love it. I love every second of it. I just wish it was in Seattle. I loved playing the Dogs in Seattle, right? That was my favorite.
Well, I had the good fortune, obviously, of being in the athletic department when Alex was here as a student athlete. And, not to have this go to your head too much, but I would just have to tell you, like at the time, you're one of the most amazing examples of what being a student athlete is all about. I mean, you were a tremendous student, tremendous athlete, a tremendous ambassador, not only of yourself, but the department. And I don't get a chance to tell you that very often. So since I've got you as a commandeered audience, and with hopefully lots of witnesses that hear that, when I heard you were coming back to the broadcast team or coming to the broadcast team, I was so excited because I think, again, you're just such a great human being, a great Cougar, but you have such great perspectives. And so first of all, thank you for everything you did for Washington State University when you were here as a student athlete and that you continue to do. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It means so much. I mean, I tell folks all the time, right? Like I'm from Eugene, Oregon, and I got this opportunity to go to Pullman and go to Washington State, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Part of why I want to be involved in the broadcast and be back on campus and do all the events and all the things is like, I wouldn't be here without Washington State and people like you, Ann, and everybody in the athletic department, my coaches and teammates. And so, again, it was such a special time in my life. And, I'm thankful that I get to come back and be able to spend more time and be around it. And that, people like you are still here and, we're all able to wave the flag together.
So as Chris mentioned, Apple Cup week, we've got Alex Brink, wax figures all around the department, and we're all touching them for good luck on the head as we go by, anything we can to help the, mojo for this week. But maybe talk a little bit about the Apple Cup rivalry, not only as a student athlete, but now, as an alum.
Well, again, like I mentioned, I grew up in Eugene, so I was a part of a rivalry, like growing up with Oregon and Oregon State. So I thought I knew like what that was. And then I got to Washington State and I figured out what the Apple Cup was and what it meant to that state and everybody involved. And it's all the things, right? It's the geographic split, it's the city and the country, it's the different schools, it's all the competitive nature, it's the family rivalry, right? Like how many families do we know who, dad went to UW and, the kids go to Washington State. And so then you've got like that, all of it. And, what I found, and this is very early on, right, is, Bill Doba, as our head football coach, did a great job of bringing back players and alumni that, had played in the game. And I played for Tim Rosenbaugh, right, who he was a Coug legend in and of himself, and Mike Levinson, all these guys. So, we got indoctrinated very early into what the Apple Cup meant and what that competitive rivalry was. And so, for me, I just see all the history and like the pageantry, and it is everything that makes football great. It's everything that makes college athletics great. And you can put it up there with the best rivalries in the sport, because of those things. And I think, for Coug fans in Washington State, it's, last year was so fun, right, in Seattle, and like what that meant. And now to have it again back in Pullman, the Cup's in Pullman already, and now you get the game in Pullman. Like, well, what a great opportunity. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's convenient or coincidence. We can't seem to find the keys to that trophy case. So I think the trophy just has to stay here, right? It's staying here. So weird.
It's so weird how that's going to happen, right?
I know. I don't know. Maybe also, people get to hear about you a lot, from your time here, or get to hear you on the broadcast and your great insights, certainly. But maybe whatever you're willing to share or want to talk to people about what you're doing now, whether it be family or what you're doing in your, your day job, so to speak, or whatever else you want to talk about. I mean, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, my family is everything, right? My wife, Joni, and I met kind of after I got done playing at Washington State and was playing for the Houston Texans. She's from Eugene. You can't hold it against her. She's a Duck, but she cheers for the Cougs when she comes to Pullman. And then I got two young boys, right? A 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, Xander and Benny. And we are in the thick of it. We got kindergarten started, and we got all this stuff, and they love sports, and they're all fired up because they saw Dad on TV a couple of weeks ago when I got to do that CW game, and so they keep asking me about the Cougs. And Xander knows our record, and he knows that when we beat the Dogs this weekend, that Cougs are going to be 3-1, and so he's got that all locked in. And then day to day, I'm very fortunate to still be in the sports space. I own a company called E4 Sports. We operate athletic training facilities in kind of the Portland metro and Vancouver area. And basically, it's holistic athletic development for young athletes and all the way up to college and pro, but primarily, helping athletes get faster and stronger. We work with football players, baseball players, volleyball, soccer, all of the above. And so I get to, it's a pretty fun passion for sure. You work with great people and, kind of a coach at heart. So it's my way of still be in the coaching space. And then on the weekends, I'm with Chris, obviously doing the broadcast. So it's a busy time in my life. And again, it's fun to stay grounded sometimes by being able to go to Pullman and see all the great people up there.
I loved last year, Alex. I know it's, you sneak away every weekend just about during the fall, but when the family was able to come to a game last year and to get to be back here, is there plans? Is the whole gang coming back up this fall at some point?
We're trying. We got a couple different options. We got one is that Joni desperately wants to come down to Ole Miss and go check out the Grove. So I think we may do that as kind of like a fun, just because that's such an iconic place, right? But for the kids, the kids loved Pullman. Bennett, my youngest, he was in those stands, and when the cheering happened and the band and Butch came out on the ATV, those are all his favorite things, right? It's motor vehicles and fire and loud noises and all this stuff, right? So he still talks about getting on the airplane and going to Pullman, which is hilarious for a 2-year-old. And Xander's old enough to kind of realize why is Dad's picture on the wall? Why are things happening? And so I think that part was really fun to share with them, right? Because obviously didn't play long enough professionally and have kids at that time, and so getting to be able to share that moment and have them there was really neat, and we want to do it again. So we're going to target maybe one of those later dates, like that Beaver game, that Oregon State game, maybe late in the year.
Well, Alex, while we have you here, and last thing for you, you kind of touched on this, but it's a unique time in college athletics where it's not just the Cougs where there's 75 new players. Every team, it seems like WSU's playing, we're counting the number of new guys. So the Apple Cup, where it's the staff, it's the players, this is new to them. And you talked about when you were a player with Coach Doba and Coach Rosenbaum, bringing former players in and having that. What would you tell these guys? Because for so many of the Cougs in the locker room, this is going to be their first Apple Cup, which is something so well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of layers to it, right? And what I would tell them is that when they walk out of that tunnel at Martin Stadium and they see, Giesa Field and they see how full it is, and they see, both Husky fans and Coug fans, and most of them have never seen that place when it is really rocking. And there's no better place, in my opinion, than Giesa Field and Martin Stadium when it's full to the brim and loud, and that place can get going. And I think that's what these athletes are going to be so fired up to see, right? It's man, there's nothing better than Coug fans at their best. And the Apple Cup brings it out of us every time. And I know it for a fact. And so I would tell them that, that feeling, right? As soon as they walk into that tunnel, that feeling when they see that place packed, that's the feeling they got to anchor to, because there is nothing better than going out and making yourself a legend in front of Coug fans. I can tell you that from personal experience, and I want them to have that. I think that is the thing that I would tell them is the most exciting about it. And that, in a rivalry game, and when you go into this sort of thing, there's so much emotion. And, a lot of people say, well, tamp it down, kind of keep it. It's you got to ride it. You got to ride the wave, because that is what is going to carry you to greatness. And so I'm excited for these guys to feel it. Again, like I said, most of them haven't had that opportunity, and I'm so fired up to see what Pullman looks like with everybody there and that place going.
Well said. Alex, you're the best. Thanks, man. We'll see you Saturday.
Yeah,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Okay, and the first episode in the books. Can't wait to continue this. We got it off and rolling, and we had a lot of fun here, and can't wait for all the fun to come.
Definitely. Me too. This was great. Appreciate you.
For Alex Brink, for President Cantwell, for Ann McCoy, that will do it. Our first edition of the Inside WSU Athletics podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk soon. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.